evening, everybody. I welcome you once more on this auspicious day of Mahasamadhi day of Lahiri Mahasaya. In fact, Yogananda ji often reminded that these special days have special blessings, whether the birthdays of the great saints and avatars or the Mahasamadhi days. So it is because on these special days, if we tune in consciously, we can invite their blessings on us and we can really feel their presence. So it is really a good fortune for all of us that we have gathered in his name this evening and we are celebrating his Mahasamadhi day. Before I begin, we know that Lahiri Mahasaya was symbolizing an ideal householder. And in fact, one time, Yogananda ji also mentioned that it is not easy to live the life of a householder. Probably many of you already know that this is not something which is challenging in many sense. And he said that yes, to become a householder and at the same time finding God can be challenging. So these are the words of Yogananda himself. But on the other hand, nevertheless, we have this great guru who was the real life example that yes, when you are born as a householder, you can still find God. It does not matter whether you are a householder renunciate or a brahmachari renunciate. We also know that in his previous incarnation, he was a King Janaka who was a householder as well as a king. So as a king, a person can have much more responsibilities, but still he was a master, he was a liberated soul. So let me read a few lines from Autobiography of a Yogi, that how Yogananda ji introduces him in one of the chapters. In one of the satsangs here, we talked about the great Christ, like, Babaji, on the Babaji's commemoration day, we remembered that this meeting in Ranikhet took place in 1861. When Babaji met Lahiri Mahasaya, he reminded him that you were my disciple in so many incarnations. And later on, he told him that, yes, you cannot meditate in this incarnation with me, but you will now have to undertake this journey of reminding everybody that God, understanding, realizing God is the only goal of life. So he sent him back. And thereafter, Master writes that by these manifold activities, in fact, before that, he said, day after day, one or two devotees besought the sublime Guru for Kriya initiation. In addition to these spiritual duties, because when he came to Benares, he's talking about that period, that many initiates took Kriya from him. And in addition to these spiritual duties and to those of his business and family life, the great master took an enthusiastic interest in education. He organized many study groups and played an active part in the growth of a large high school in Bengali Tola section of Benares. His regular discourses on the scriptures came to be called his Gita Assembly, eagerly attended by many truth seekers. So in fact, this Gita Assembly is also not different from what he was doing. By these manifold activities, Lahiri Mahasaya sought to answer the common challenge, and here he's talking of that same challenge, that after performing one's business and social duties, where is the time for devotional meditation? That is the question often the busy householder asked himself at times. But the harmoniously balanced life of the great householder Guru became the silent inspiration of thousands of questioning hearts. Earning only a modest salary, thrifty, unostentatious, accessible to all, the master carried on naturally and happily in the path of worldly life. So those are the words of Yogananda, which introduces Lahiri Mahasaya to a person who is reading the Autobiography of a Yogi for the first time, and he sees that there was this great master who is an avatar, who was a householder, who had children, who had business responsibilities, who had social responsibilities, and yet he was doing everything to find God, and he found God and he became a good example. And it is interesting that this whole drama of life, because today is a Bhagavad Gita Satsang also, so I will pick up a Gita Shloka also today. And before that, Master said that it is very interesting that, Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita that get away, Arjuna, from this ocean of miseries and sufferings, because you won't get anything here, because this place is meant to be a place of ocean of miseries and sufferings. So one wonders that if it is a place of ocean of miseries and sufferings, why did he create it? Because what was the reason to create such a pool of ocean of miseries and sufferings where he himself is telling Arjuna to get away? So, that's the question which sometimes Master said that it will come. And often he says, I used to argue with God that why did you create this world? And he said, although I know the answer, but I still argue on behalf of those who do not know the answer. And he said, these questions I always put to him, because I tell him that look at you, for you it is a dream, but look at those people. Let us say there is a couple who just gets married. It's like a love at first sight kind of a thing. They get into married life, and after a few years one of them just leaves the world. And think about the terrible sorrow of the other person who stays behind. And then he says, sometimes, I remind God that think about people, those who are earning money, and their hard-earned money, they build something and they invest their money, and suddenly the market crashes and they lose everything in that moment. These are something which are everyday happenings. And he said, think about such people. And he said, think about people, those who are having terrible diseases, cancers, and some incurable illnesses. Why have you created germs which are becoming resistant to doctors' medicines also? And he said, in the end, if you have to just pile up all the bones of these multiple people, those who have taken birth in multiple ages, that pile will be as big as a Himalaya. But then he said, after extolling God and coaxing God, in what way, the God answers. So let me read that answer of God when he talks to him like that. And the Lord says, I have made all men in my image. If you know you are a part of me, you can live in this world and enjoy it as I do. Now this is very interesting. If you know you are a part of me, then you can enjoy the world, just like God is enjoying. At times, at another point, Master explains that creating this world is a hobby for God. Now then he says that there are two kinds of artists. Now artist can be, he said many times, we take art as a hobby. And then he says that sometimes there are commercial artists, those who sell their art and make a living out of it. But then there are other artists who said that they just make it for fun. They just enjoy it, and they don't want any money of it. And he said the God is in the second category, because he does not want anything from this creation, because if he has to take anything out of the creation, then he is not complete in himself. When we say that God is all perfect, God is omnipotent, and God is omniscient, so he does not want anything from this creation. But then he said that when he was present, let us say go in the beginning of the creation, when there was nothing but God himself alone, he said he was all alone in his joy and power and love. And then at that point he felt that there is no one with whom I can share this love, with whom I can share this joy. And he said at that point God decided that let me create human beings in my own image, and then I will give them a soul, I will give them an individualized spirit, I will play through them, and then I will play in a way that I will tempt them by money, wine, sex, and see if they go to that side of Maya of the world, or on the other side I will be attracting them by my magnetic love, and then see to it, which is million times stronger, and see whether my children will take me, whether they will accept me. And Yogananda said from that aspect, this whole Leela, this is how it was created. And it has no other purpose. He said it is just a play which is going on where, he's just waiting and thinking that whether my children are just happy to play with the gifts and toys that I have created for them, or they will in the end come and accept me. And this, he said, is this freedom of will is the greatest gift, because nobody else apart from human beings have this willpower, have this choice to decide in which direction we can go. And he said at another point that sages are, in a way, people, those who are half awake. They know that one part of them is always awake in God, and the other part is knowing that, yes, this is just a dream, it is just a creation, it is just a play of God. And that is how you can live in this world, and still you can enjoy it also, and at the same time you won't suffer, because you know that you are a spirit. That is why we started our satsang this evening with this chant, that no birth, no death, no caste have I am He, which is to say that I am nothing, but I am a part of God, I am a child of God, and I am spirit. How can any suffering touch me? Now, at this point, this is something which Master reminds, that this play, ultimately, it's like the whole, thing, which is Leela, in fact, with the word, the Maya, if you see, or the Satan, is also a creation of God. So in one way, you can say that God is testing us, He's playing through with us, and He's trying to tempt us that, okay, which direction you want to take, because any pleasure which is going to come will always have an associated pain with it, because it is a dual nature of the universe. But it is really staggering that despite the pain associated with the pleasure, it takes so much time to get to this point that when we can say, God, your love and your joy and your divinity is alone that what matters for me, and I don't want anything else. And then Master explains that this, how can it happen? Because you see, world has power. God has deliberately given that power to the world. Otherwise, it will be very easy. And in one of the, in this books of Demystifying Patanjali, where, Patanjali has condensed all the Yoga Sutras, and Master says that it is like simplifying the path to going back to God. He says that this battle which we are fighting every day can become easy, because world has a power, it is pulling us. But the reason is that the property of mind is that mind ever grows by what it feeds upon. So if we are feeding the mind with the world, then world has a power on us, and it keeps attracting us towards that. Whereas if we put our mind to God, then God starts pulling us towards Him. And that is what we have to understand. And in the first chapter, 15th Sutra, Patanjali says that from constant self-remembrance, there comes complete non-attachment to things seen or heard. When one lives in the consciousness of God, all outer attachments fade away. Now, this is something which is a very simple way to make it understand for any spiritual aspirant or a devotee. If we can just take one excuse or the other to just keep on reminding ourselves to remember Him in whatever way we can, our job can become much easier. Then world will start fading away. World will not be able to pull us towards it. In the previous sutra, he says that spiritual practice becomes firmly grounded when it is undertaken for a long time without a break and with deep earnestness. Now that deep earnestness is, I think, a very important word there, because many times, I saw this, that these world has different, it is always very innovative to attract our attention, just as one of my friend always reminds me that Satan never sleeps. In fact, he never bothers for the people, those who are already anyways in his clutches. But anyway, any person who is trying to get away from his clutches, he tries 101 ways to, pull him out. And this is something, and in fact, Satan is an instrument of God. So God knows that I have to test my own self, because he himself is playing this role. So he wants to see whether my own children, those who are created in my own image, can pass this battle, can pass this test. And this we can understand by many examples. At one point I was thinking like, now just see, because Yogananda writes in this book also, which was written by Swamiji, but it is his thoughts only, which have percolated through Swami, that our thoughts and actions, we feel that they are in our hands, but they have so much influence by so many things. And Swami enumerates like what kind of influences we have on our thoughts and actions. He says that, first of all, what kind of actions you have committed in previous birth, what kind of place you are living in, what kind of neighborhood you live in, what kind of country you have taken birth into, what kind of people, what kind of expectations people have from you in which you mix up. Then he says the stars and the planets, they also have an influence on us. And he puts, so many things, and then you wonder that whether those thoughts and actions which I'm doing are really mine or not. And then in the end, he says that we are a mixture of so many tendencies, so many traits that we are carrying within us, that we can hardly say that we are free. But we are free in one aspect, he said, because somebody asked him, sir, and he asked Yogananda ji, he said, sir, I want to build devotion. I don't think I have devotion. What should I do? He said, choose your company wisely. If you will live among devotees, you will soon become devoted. And that is why he was always strengthening this fact that environment is stronger than willpower. It does not matter. And Swami writes in this book also that irrespective of so many tendencies that we are carrying, but if we choose our company wisely, all those vrittis, they can straighten out in the end. And that is why I was listening to one of the satsangs of Swamiji recently. He said, it's not surprising that why Yogananda ji gave the name of Self-Realization Fellowship to his organization. He said self-realization, first of all, means that we have to understand who we are. And then fellowship. What does that mean? Word mean fellowship. Fellowship, he said, in Sanskrit means sangha. And so or the companionship. So he said, first of all, this fellowship is with God. So self-realization fellowship or fellowship with truth. But at the same time, also with truth seekers. So fellowship with truth and truth seekers is going to help us in that regard, and it will help us finally in understanding who we are. It will straighten our vrittis also. And this is really important, that how the world is trying to create distractions for us in so many, in one way or the other. If I give you one example, at one point I stopped watching television because I knew that television, I was anyways watching news on television, but in the news also I saw that there are so many things which these people, they project, that I felt that it is not making sense. I'm getting rather more irritable after watching the news. So I stopped watching television long back. I hardly at times watch the television. But I realized that after getting this gadget in my hand of mobile phone, I was still watching news in some other format, which is to say that even if just you go and scroll some of these first post news, and even if you have this idea that okay, I'll just go through quickly in 1 minute, by the time you realize you have actually spent 15 minutes on watching the news itself on the phone. Even if you're not watching a video, you're just reading. And this was happening, this is happening not one time in the day, but it is actually happening 5 to 6 times in the day for me. And I realized that, see, the world is how this distraction, if I can cut down on one distraction slowly, then I can utilize those 15 minutes in being with God. And that is what is the play going on. Because I love to watch news, so I have stopped watching television, but I'm choosing some other gadget to, see what is happening in the world around. And it is not bad to see, and even Yogananda used to see, get to the news, current affairs at the end of the day for just few minutes. But, spending 4 or 5 times in a day, so that is one thing which I have to work upon and cut down on distraction. So one of the homeworks which I feel can be for all of us is to see in what subtle ways world is trying to take attention from you, And if we can cut down on those distractions, we can spend that time on God, and you will see that this Patanjali Sutra, that mind grows by what it feeds upon. So if we spend time with the world, naturally world will look attractive. And if we spend time with God, then God will. And that is why we call Krishna Krishna, because Krishna, what does that mean? He attracts. He has that power of attraction. And that is why his name is Krishna, because he can attract, he can pull our hearts to himself. Another thing which I want to talk this evening is about that Master says that how to live in the presence of God. Meditation, he said, is one way. And the other, he said, here he writes that I would rather be somewhere sitting under a tree, absorbed in meditation on God, or be busy serving others to make them comfortable with true peace and happiness. So when we talk of this fellowship of truth seekers, Master wants to remind us also that please do not sit on the fence. He says that God has created each one of us, which we are nothing but God's individualized spirit. So another homework which I feel we all should do this evening is to dive deeper within us and see what is that special talent that we have, which we can offer to God. And in that process, our growth will continue to happen. And Swami says that don't think that you have to lead an organization. Don't think that all of you have to come here and give a talk. It may not be your dharma. You can just be doing what you have been doing, but still at the same time have this conversation with God, have this attunement with God, because that unique talent, you have been created for a special purpose, as Swami used to remind us always. And that special, unique talent, nobody can offer to the world, only you can give. Now that would be a great service, because Master said that meditation, self-realization is one thing which will give you, meditation will give you that, but he puts their word or, if you see, that in order to see this world the way God sees it, he says either I would be meditating under the tree, or he said, I would be busy serving others to make them comfortable with the true peace and happiness. And this is the shloka in Bhagavad Gita also, which I will conclude with, because this is a Bhagavad Gita Satsang, that Krishna also is reminding us that one attains perfection. This is the 18th chapter, 46th shloka. That one attains perfection by offering his own special gifts up to him, out of whom all beings were manifested, and by whom the whole universe is permeated. And just in case you are wondering that my special gift is not that good, I have so many imperfections. Krishna reminds us in the 48th shloka. He says, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, one should not abandon the work dictated by his own nature, even though the work contains some imperfection. For all undertakings, even the best, are marred by blemishes, even as a flame is obscured by smoke. So it just does not matter. Just give it. Whatever you have, whatever talent you have, just give it to God. And in the shloka itself, he's saying, you will attain perfection by offering his own special gift, whatever you have, up to him. You will attain that perfection gradually. So isn't it beautiful? I would like to conclude now with the Lahiri Mahasaya's words. He said that always remember that you belong to no one and no one belongs to you. Reflect that someday you will suddenly have to leave everything in this world. So make the acquaintanceship of God now. Prepare yourself for the coming astral journey of death by daily riding in the balloon of God perception. Through delusion, you are perceiving yourself as a bundle of flesh and bones, which at best is a nest of troubles. Meditate unceasingly. that you may quickly behold yourself as the infinite essence, free from every form of misery. Cease being a prisoner of the body, using the secret key of Kriya. Learn to escape into spirit. Thank you. So we'll just